Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video we got another update for Shadowlands Alpha. Last week, Blizzard actually skipped out on an update, but in this one they came in with a full swing, and it introduces a whole brand new zone. I introduced to you the Ardenwald and the Night Fae Covenant. This is where you'll be hanging out if you end up going with the Night Fae as your Covenant option. And trust me, some of the sites that they have are absolutely spectacular, and some of the creatures that embody it, if you're someone who is really into this druid or even shaman-like lore, you're going to be a huge fan of this. With this build, we also got a variety of customization options to play with when it comes to the alpha. So I want to show you those first, and then I want to showcase a little bit of this new glorious zone that we get to play with in the early version of the game. First things first, when you craft a character on the alpha, you are now dressed in different preview gear. Normally your character looks like something that would be basic starter gear like back in the day classic, or maybe like those booster character greens that you would usually wear that are iconic to your class. Well, Blizzard decided to spice them up on the alpha, and right now our characters are dressed in a variety of different tier sets depending on your class. These overall look amazing, and this is a really cool idea because some of the pieces we've had kind of look lame and not really as inspired, and some of these, especially if you played in Legion or maybe even some of you guys played in WoW and you had a really good experience in those raids, then these are so cool to see that character as a future class wear. It looks absolutely fantastic. Although I think it would be cool if Blizzard did like a community thing where people voted for which tier sets should be in the preview. And I'd like for you guys to leave a comment down below which tier sets should Blizzard use if they were to change any for any of the classes. Also, shamans and druids are still not fully dressed up, so I'm excited to see what tier sets they might use for those two, or if they might leave those as is. But either way, this is kind of a cool idea when it comes to your character customization to see a small preview of what the future holds. Next, we have Blood Oaths and actual customizations that you can finally play around in the game. They are a little bit buggy, as you'll notice the necklace textures are a little bit wonky and weird. So the necklaces and earrings don't properly show up right now, but everything else that Blizzard has been teasing us with is there. I tried to get on a Void Elf to see if some of those Blood Elf customizations are also available for Void Elves, because some of the skin tones and hair colors and hair choices should also be available for Void Elves as well, but I guess it's going to be rolled out in another build. You have everything from the different hair colors, the different skin tones, the different haircuts, all the way down to the eye color choices. And yes, the blue-eyed Blood Elves is going to be a thing. And on the alpha right now, the Void Elves also have different types of eyes for you to choose from, all the way from the original blue to more purple, and even more of this Blood Elf blue eyes, or I guess the High Elf blue eyes. Some people even mentioned that when staring at both Blood Elves and Void Elves, it almost seems like this hue of blue is slightly different if you're a Blood Elf and slightly different if you're a Void Elf, but I can't really notice the difference, but maybe you guys will be able to in the comments. Blizzard also surprised us with Wildhammer Dwarf customizations for normal dwarves, and it looks like most of the different customizations are available in the alpha. I don't know if this is a complete set, but it looks like just about everything that Blizzard teased before is there. We'll of course start with tattoos with different tattoo customizations and 4 different colors of tattoos that Wildhammer Dwarves may wear. You also have other small customizations like earrings for your dwarves, and you can do normal earrings like studs to be more, I guess, normal original dwarf, but if you want to go more for the wild hammer, the wild dwarves that ride griffins, you can go for feathers behind your ear. And Blizzard even added face jewelry, so you can have specific jewelry on your nose for your male dwarf, and other jewelry options available for females as well. You also have different skin tones finally available for Wildhammer Dwarves that Blizzard teased. You have different eye colors, even more colors for your hair and beard, which don't all work with beard all that well. There's some textures problem there, but you can finally craft your own Wildhammer Dwarf any way that you imagine a Wildhammer Dwarf would look like. And this was really cool. Honestly, surprised that Blizzard added this in this build, and I think this is mostly everything. So the Wildhammer Dwarf customization is kind of what every other race, at least vanilla races, maybe certain allied races as well, are going to have this level of customization. You have a whole section for the head, whole section for the body being tattoos, and then jewelry on top of it. and it makes me wonder what other tidbits could Blizzard add as well. And yes, I told you, the hair with the beard, it just doesn't properly show. There's a lot more colors, but like the braid down the middle of the beard, there's something about that texture that is just completely missing with dwarves. Otherwise, having like a massive green mohawk would look cool, but otherwise right now it kind of looks like Play-Doh. But that's something that maybe Blizzard can adjust and correct, or maybe this is how it's supposed to look like, and maybe it's just with these new tones that have less of this braid look, but it kind of does look funky. Now, I'm not someone who planned ever on playing a dwarf, but if I ever did play Alliance, I think dwarf would be one of my first choices because of how cool some of the customizations are for this. I could totally imagine a piratey outlaw rogue dwarf that's also a wildhammer, just swinging axes, riding a griffin, grappling all over the place like a wild man, and just obliterating everyone in his face. I gotta be honest, I'm actually surprised with how good some of these dwarf customizations look. Now let's talk a bit about Ardenwald. This place looks fantastic. If you're a huge fan of Shadowmoon from back in Warlords of Draenor and a mix of, let's say, nighttime sky, night elf leveling areas, maybe a little bit of Drustvar in there, and if you're a huge fan of this open landscape nature forest, then I think you're going to be a huge fan of this zone. This whole place is covered with fairies, with spirits that decided to live out the rest of life as animals. You also have tree spirits, you have these stag people that are either on two hoofs or in like a centaur form, and it looks fantastic. There's a lot of blue and a lot of pretty colors. Everything is shiny and kind of dreamy looking. I was actually kind of blown away because I was a huge fan of the Kyrian. It looked like what you would expect, I guess, heaven to look like. And then you had the Venthyr, which had this whole Transylvania vampire theme, massive cathedrals from afar, gothic look, and this place just has a completely whole new feel. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Legion, how Legion had the 4 different zones, and none of the zones really felt like one another. You had massive oceanfront area, you had the Val'sharah that's just forest, thick and thin, you have the mountains of High Mountain, as well as this like forestry, rocky, kind of like this oldie area from Stormheim. And I think that's maybe what Blizzard is trying to go for some of these zones. There is one more zone we haven't seen, and that's going to be Maldraxxus. Not a lot is known about Maldraxxus, but from screenshots, it looks kind of like this barren wasteland desert with a little bit of green toxic fluids everywhere. And it is the place where Lich King's military ward was, where most of the Undead Scourge army came from. So I'm very excited about the lore aspect of it. But back to Ardenwald, this place, I mean, if you're not a huge fan of the color blue, then this place will literally make you see blue. Watching other people pick up their Covenant abilities and being able to test some of them in the Tower of Torghast as Covenant abilities are rotating through. Just about every single class has a very flashy, probably some of the more flashier abilities, and all of them have this blue hue to them. Except for rogues. The rogue ability actually doesn't look like anything. You just put up a poison on the enemy and it doesn't really have anything flashy. I believe there is some blue sparkle around the enemy that is dotted with the Covenant ability from rogues, but nothing really quite as massive and exciting as looking as some of the other classes like Death Knights and Shamans. Speaking about the Covenant ability for rogues, it's called Sepsis. Sepsis actually went through a few changes, and I'll make a full detailed video talking about what Sepsis is and if I like it and comparing it against other abilities, because now rogues are also on the Torghast, so eventually I'll be able to compare that against the Necrolord abilities and Kyrian and Venthyr and tell you guys which ones are my favorite, which ones I liked, how would I change them. But long story short, with Sepsis, you put up a poison on an enemy and it takes out over time. Either two things happen. Either the enemy dies while they have sepsis. In that case, the ability's cooldown will be refreshed completely. So let's say if you use them on an enemy and as they're about to die, you can you keep using this ability as this extra execute dot mechanic, and you can keep getting this ability back. Or the ability will tick out the full duration and the enemy doesn't die from sepsis, at which at the last tick of sepsis, it will do a burst of nature damage and will force the rogue to vanish, which will allow a rogue in PvE content to catch an extra re-stealth like a subtlety rogue for a shadow strike to proc find weakness, for an assassination rogue to be able to re-garrote the enemy if you play an empowered garrote, or maybe even ambush the enemy for extra combo points. Or if you're outlaw, I guess you can ambush, cheap shot, whatever it may be. But if timed right in PvE content, you might be able to dive into stealth in order to use this strategically for your advantage. But let's be honest, an ability that lets a rogue vanish mid-combat just screams PvP. For Assassination, this could be quite useful when training a healer. You'll load up the healer full of dots and start to put pressure with Vendetta. Maybe you'll get a trinket out of them and throw them in a kidney. And as the enemy is getting closer and closer and closer to low health, Sepsis will activate, allowing the rogue to dive into stealth. If you're an Assassination rogue, you can hit the healer with a garrote, preventing them from healing for a little bit extra time, giving you more moments and opportunity in order to control the enemy healer and score that kill. If you're Subtlety, that gives you a Vanish, which you can combo into cheap shots on enemies or Shadow Strikes for damage. If you're Outlaw, that seems to be the only spec that can't really get that much value, unless you want to go for cheap shot or ambush, but nowhere near as effective as Assassination and Subtlety that can take massive advantage of this ability. This ability doesn't even cost that much. It's only on a 1.5 minute cooldown, so it's kind of an easy ability to play with so far. But again, I'll have a more detailed look in terms of how this ability stacks up against other Covenant abilities in the future. Some of the favorite faces that you guys might have liked or might have not, like from Battle for Azeroth, are going to be the Drust. The Drust from the Battle for Azeroth Drustvar area are going to be back, and they are going to try to take things over. And some of the bad guys from the Waycrest dungeon are also, maybe or maybe not, are coming back. And it's really kind of cool to see all these spirits playfully playing with one another, and the Drust are here trying to attack things, and there's a bit of story in the alpha so far. None of it really voiced and none of it fully complete, but it's kind of cool to see some of the familiar faces just from the other expansion. Also, if you played Legion, there's going to be a familiar face that may or may not be returning. And if you're someone who enjoyed the storyline of Legion, I think the storyline through Ardenwald might be one that you might enjoy. But without spoiling directly exactly what it is, I'm going to leave it there. Overall, Ardenwald actually was surprisingly awesome. I didn't really bank myself playing Ardenwald or the Fae because I never really thought for a rogue that fits my playstyle, or even the transmogs that the Covenant provides. I still have my reservations on some of the transmog that the Ardenwald will be able to provide. I like the plate and maybe the mail. The leather I'm not quite sure of. However, the Covenant ability seemed overall pretty strong and fun to use, has a lot of potential for it. The zones are absolutely fantastic and are surprisingly massive. And overall, I love the environment that this place just provides. It's actually kind of mesmerizing. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video about the Ardenwald, about some of the Ardenwald updates, as well as customization updates for some of the other races available on the alpha. Anyway guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another one.